right, Joseph with Landscape King. This is the Landscape King podcast. Today, you notice I'm not by myself, so we have somebody a little bit different presentation for you today. So far, we've just been talking about landscaping. The whole point of this podcast is to educate people about landscaping, just kind of sharing what we've learned. But we have been mentioning that we would talk about business. So today, we have a special guest. This is Toby Massengale. A lot of people will know Massengale landscape or lawn and landscape, whatever it was.
Grounds management.
Grounds management. Kind of today, I want to talk about how you got to that level of not only getting it to be a successful company, but being able to exit it as well, and now being able to help business owners with what you do now. So first, how did you even get into landscaping?
So I had, with my current, wife, we had gone to Greece. We were young, sort of thrill-seeking, and in that time, my father had been in the highway contracting business, multi-generation family, and in the 80s, like a lot of folks, fell on hard times, had to close the business, and he wound up, through the help of a friend, working with folks who lived in halfway houses trying to get back into the workforce, right? Started a land care or landscape business, mowing lawns.
Right. Was it mostly residential at the time? They were just cutting houses?
And the church that he went to wound up giving him the contract to landscape that. So I came back from Greece needing to do something. And he asked me to pitch in and help him. At the time, it was going to be a temporary gig for me.
And you were like 19 or 20, or how old were you?
21.
Nice. And
I was 21.
When we talked about it before, you said you were running a hotel on a Greek island.
Yeah.
nothing super fancy, but it still was like
right.
A crazy experience.
It was fun. It was fun.
So you come back, you're just helping him out, and you're thinking, hey, I'm just gonna do this for a little bit, cut some grass.
Yeah, and I'd never really given much thought to landscaping, but I kind of threw myself into it, and I had tried to go to school, and just existing within that structure wasn't for me. So I found this, sort of freedom. When it came to being involved in a business, getting up, going to work every day, I loved it, and sort of fell in love with the landscape business in that way.
And so, how long were you with him until? Because then you bought him out, right?
Yeah. So 91, 92 is when I got back and started helping him out. And at the time, my mother, it was a family affair. We were all working in the business, and slowly we kind of outgrew that program
of what you were doing.
Yeah, helping folks get back into the workforce, and just kind of.
So that at that point, that program was providing the laborers for you guys?
Yeah, the deal was you worked with those folks in the halfway house to get back into the labor force. And, I'm 21, 22 years old, and I guess super excited, ambitious, and aggressive. We started growing the business, and it just kind of took off from there. And so, in 1997 is when I bought my father out.
Gotcha.
He, I think it was more than he wanted to mess with at the time. He had other thoughts, other plans, but he only stayed away for about a year because that was that I guess 97, 98 was around the time they built the Mall of Louisiana, and I had my eye on that job. I stalked those guys for 6 months. The landscape company that was out there installing it, just rode out on the job site every day. Met the guy that was
like the developer or the
the foreman or project manager that was over the landscape. They were ultimately going to make the decision for the company that maintained it. And so I just, I put it on my refrigerator, as they say. I set my sights on getting them all. And that was, I guess, our first real big breakout project.
Into the commercial world, or just in general?
No, in terms of Class A Rockstar properties, we were doing Rockstar Class A work for B-grade customers, I guess. Landscapes that had no particular rhyme or reason, right? Just doing our best to make them better. But the mall was going to be our first sort of step into the big time projects, and so
at 1997, so a few things. One is, now being in this digital world, like, we get a lot of our leads in business from social media and Google. So how are you getting most of your leads at that time? I mean, I guess obviously you're stalking people out, like the mall and stuff like that.
Well, and you stop in and you talk to them.
Yeah.
You house call. Let's say house call.
So you did that a lot?
We had to focus on commercial work.
Right.
Yeah.
And even
stop
then,
in and kind of cold call them.
Even then, it was still, and backing up a little bit too, at what point did you decide residential is not where we want to be? We want to be in the commercial world. And when you made that decision, what were the reasons for making that decision?
Well, it's an easy business to get into. And the larger the job, the harder it is to, I guess, how should I say it? The bigger the job, the less competition I found there was. And I love the challenge of taking a large landscape, a large, 20-acre development, and making it beautiful, as we all love to do in the landscape business.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Okay, so 1997, you get the mall. That's like the first breakout Rockstar property. So what kind of happens next, and where are you at kind of revenue numbers at this point too?
I think the mall pushed us over into the $1.5 million, $2 million range.
And y'all finished out the install, like, because you took it from the person that was already doing the install, and then y'all helped them finish.
Well,
we
it's
had
an
talked about
interesting
that
point.
before.
Yeah. So the big deal with the mall, really, I guess, obviously secondarily to the fact that we got the mall, was my first experience working with Hispanic Workers, H2B guys.
Yeah.
Which was absolutely amazing. I think that, probably was the single biggest event that changed the course of our business, working with those guys, because we were at one point, I guess, unfortunately for the company doing the installation, Merritt Brothers was the name of the company. They were out of South Carolina. They weren't using H2B workers. Most of their guys were undocumented, and
Right.
Somebody called INS on them, and they went from 50 guys on the job site to 3 in one afternoon. And so he needed help, and I saw my opportunity there to step in, and we had guys, local guys that were our workforce, but it was better than nothing.
Right.
And
when he was down to 3 guys.
Yeah, threw myself headlong into that, learned what I could, and we helped him out of a bind, and he was a good guy, and I think that probably sealed the fate for our being first in line. I had to, at the time, and I guess it's still the case, you had to have your Louisiana contractor's license to bid on jobs that were over $50,000.
Right.
And I didn't have mine. And so I signed up, to take the test, and if I passed the test, we got the job, and if I didn't pass the test,
came down to that.
We didn't get the job. So that was fun.
And so, do you remember what so at that point, what was that test like? Like, was it?
It was
pretty
pretty silly.
Yeah.
It
was more of just like paying, like you had to take a test, but you had just paid the fee to really get the license.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was a test, one of those tests that they want you to take a couple of times and pay the fee a couple of times in order to pass, learn the questions, that sort of thing. But really had no practical bearing on being successful in the landscape business. It was just some silly stuff
that you just
almost
had to
a
have.
trivia, type test. I don't know if it's changed since, but passed the test, got that. My dad actually. So they wound up. The mall needed somebody to sweep the parking lots too, and so I guess a year had gone by, and Pop found himself bored, and I asked him if he wanted to take over the street sweeping or the parking lot sweeping, and so that kind of pulled him back into the business with me, which was awesome. We had a great relationship, great partnership, and it was just he and I, and the guys that we had working with us at the time. We had started to subcontract all the chemical work.
Got you at that point
to Greenleaf Tree and Shrub, and they were a big part of our operation, our success, in terms of making landscapes look beautiful
and catching disease and,
right,
and spraying for insects and stuff, especially with weeds.
Yeah,
like in the lawn. But they sprayed in the beds and in the lawn for you, right?
Yeah. Our thing was, we don't just maintain properties, landscapes. We grow them.
That's right.
And they were a big part of that, kind of our secret weapon. But we always focused on delivering exceptional service, exceeding the customer's expectations. But that experience working with those guys, I was at the time working in the field every day. I would wake up at 4 a.m, go pick everyone up.
How many guys did you have at that point?
We were probably 10.
Okay. Did you have a minivan or a big bus or something? Or
Just a big truck.
Yeah. Throw them in the back.
Yeah. And that's how we got the work done.
Yeah.
When I got exposed to the work ethic of the Hispanic
visa workers.
Yeah. And I began digging into it.
You signed up the next day.
Learned about H-2B visas. Yeah. Kind of, my dad, he was against it. It was too weird for him, bringing folks over from another country and housing them, and, the language barrier. It was just too much for him. We argued about it, said, we're doing it. Trust me. Yeah. We won't regret it. And, and when it was all said and done with, he was their biggest fan. So, and then I guess around 2008, we got our first, group of H-2B workers. And
so it took about 10 years then, from like 97 of you like being exposed to it to like 2008.
Yeah. Yep.
And so at that point, so from then to then, you were still just going and picking up those same kind of guys.
Mm-hmm.
And it was still it.
That's right.
So at that point too, how many office staff and how many like leadership positions did you have filled? Like, how many roles other than just laborers did you have from like that 1.5 to, I guess like in 2008 you were probably like closer to like 5 million or so?
Yeah, we had, for the longest time, just someone in the office answering the phone, and
even from the beginning, like even when your dad was involved.
Yeah, we were all field guys.
Gotcha.
And it wasn't until he got sick, and 2008 might be a little bit aggressive. So back that up, maybe more like 2005, when we first started, getting the
visa workers.
The visa workers. Just somebody in the office. But when my dad got sick, diagnosed with brain cancer, he was no longer able to work in the field. And so at that point, I began I needed to replace him, and we began to sort of build the infrastructure and something that you see in most landscape companies today, you know, with account managers, production managers, so forth and so on like that.
And so what were you exposed to at that point? I know you've mentioned Vistage and other groups, but tell me a little bit about like the influence of those groups and how that helped you create that structure in the business.
Well, so
or you weren't even introduced
with no
to that
experience running a business, how to build a business. You know, for me, I was, you know, all we needed to do was be great landscapers. That was the key to being successful in business. And when I started to create an infrastructure within the organization, hire account managers and production managers and sales guys, you know, my father and I, we never had to have a conversation about core values and core focus, who our customer was. We were always, I mean, we bickered every day about,
Sure,
but it was for the greater good of the organization, right? We were always aligned, always moving in the same direction. So I didn't even know that that was a thing until started bringing other folks in to the organization who maybe had different ideas, their own ideas.
Right.
It didn't make them bad or wrong. It became harder and harder to keep all those arrows moving in the same direction. And I found myself solving more people problems than landscape problems.
And at what point, like at what revenue number did you find that transition happen? Where you're
it's around 5, you know, the 4 to 5 million range. And that's not to say that's a milestone marker. It's, you know, just happens to be when I realized that there had to be more to this. And so I began looking for answers, reading books. I joined Vistage, which is a CEO peer group, trying to figure this thing out.
And for you, there's a lot of people, and maybe people who follow us online, but who just kind of find contentment in just being like a like a solopreneur. And they're just in a truck and they just got guys and they're just like, they're content with that. Maybe they're more profitable and they're just good with that. But for you, what inside of you said that was just not enough?
I don't know. You know, I wanted to, you know, I believed that the projects we had enhanced the community. As I fell in love with landscaping, I believed that.
So it was a passion for landscaping too, like that really started happening.
Yeah. We felt like we were doing our part to make Baton Rouge and the other towns that we had business in a better place to live. Landscape makes everything better.
Yeah, it does. Of course it does. I feel that way, and I know for me it was, you know, just being passionate about plants has really kind of pushed me along too.
Yeah, and maybe there was a competitive spirit that that sort of kicked in to overdrive, and I felt like we could be the best, and that we deserved to have the best projects to maintain, and it was fun competing.
And in doing that, so kind of backing up a little bit too, originally it's just maintenance, and then it kind of turns into only commercial maintenance. And then we've talked about this, but at what point was it like, we're doing all this maintenance, we also need to do the enhancements and the installs? And how did you keep that separate to where it was still efficient as far as like training guys, making sure the installs were completed the way they were supposed to? And did it just require you to be there all the time? And kind of how did you transition to where those installs were done properly without like a lot of oversight? Or was it always you just had a person there
Well, I
all the
had
time?
my right-hand man was a fellow by the name of Jason Guerin, and so he was a formerly educated landscape architect,
Right.
And but kind of a had a blue collar work spirit about him. So as soon as he came to work for me, I kind of took the turf management, the weekly visits, the mow, blow, string trim, all those tasks, and I gave him the horticulture stuff, including the enhancements. There were days when he was, a crew of one doing a landscape enhancement. The guy had an amazing work ethic, and we were aligned, he and I.
But
so
that value would have been like hard work. Like being hardworking kind of was that core value that both of you had. If you had to put a word to it.
Yeah. Achieving a certain standard of excellence. Because, there's good landscape installation, then there's bad landscape installation, right? So yeah, we were aligned in that way. And so whenever you're maintaining a property, I think enhancements are just a natural evolution, a natural part of that maintenance that you do. Customers are just going to naturally, something's going to come up.
Right.
Area of the landscape needed some drainage improvement. Seasonal color is sort of just an understood part of maintaining commercial landscape property.
And then him being formally trained,
Yeah.
that probably helped you, especially with, was there ever like a ceiling that you hit of like, you mentioned drainage or like some sort of subject that you really didn't know how to do, did you just have to find a sub, or he kind of just landed at the perfect time to where you were able to let him figure those things out?
Well, fortunately, it's a simple business, right?
Right.
We said it earlier, it's the right plant in the right place. And those two things have to be true for the right practice to grow the landscape, right? And so you have a landscape that's your responsibility and it doesn't look like it should, and you got to ask the question, why? Is it the program that we are offering, or is it the wrong plant?
Right.
Is it a shade-loving plant that needs full sun,
right,
or is planted in the full sun, or vice versa? So we began to reverse engineer, and I'm not saying Jason had all the answers, but we figured it out together. And so you wind up with enhancements, fixing areas of the landscape that weren't done properly for whatever reason. And so enhancements kind of were always part of the maintenance, I feel like. Now, at the time when we first got started, it was usually the request of the customer to fix these areas of the landscape. As we grew, we became more intentional about wanting to fix every area of the landscape that needed to be fixed that wasn't done, in quite the right way. Drainage just happens to be a real common and probably one very overlooked.
Especially in South Louisiana.
Yeah.
Raining as much as it does.
And then so
it became a part of the sales process, or even like your account managers, like they were trained to, hey, when you see this, when you talk to the client about this, and create kind of, tell me about that a little bit.
Well, I read and I heard a fella speak. His name was James Kane, and he talked about loyalty and creating loyalty. And he said it's not a phenomena that happens by accident, that it's actually scientific, and you can be intentional about creating loyalty. And the number one prerequisite before loyalty can exist is an alignment of expectations with whoever is on the other side of the table, whoever your customer is. And so we began early on in our sales process. We did a thorough survey and evaluation of the property, and we let the customer know what our program was going to fix and what it wasn't going to fix to align the expectation. And so, if it was the wrong plant in the wrong place, those were things our program wasn't going to fix. And so we began telling the customer from the get-go to align our expectations and create trust, right?
Right.
And, there may be issues with the landscape that weren't a priority for the customer. So it might be 5 years, but we created that expectation and let them know
about it. Right.
Yeah, what it was going to cost right up front.
Instead of them coming back and saying, hey, this is a problem, why didn't you fix this? If you would not have set that expectation.
That's right. There's a honeymoon phase, and once the honeymoon phase is over, you own it.
Right.
So,
how many times did you not set the expectation properly? Like, how many times did you make that mistake of not doing that?
Oh, if I was counting, I probably would have lost count.
Yeah.
It took us a while to figure it out.
Like, you didn't do everything right the whole way. And maybe sometimes people get discouraged in business whenever they feel like they keep making mistakes or things aren't going the way. How did you get through that? And did you just always knew that you were just going to keep going no matter what? Or maybe you never made mistakes, right? You were just
No. That's made a lot of mistakes. I tried not making the same mistake twice to the extent that I could.
Right.
And again, I wanted to be the best.
And that was almost from the beginning. Like, once you started really getting passionate about it, like,
yeah,
this was it. And so in doing that, what did your work schedule look like? Like, where you said 4 a.m. to, like, what time did you get home every day?
Oh, it was a 14-hour day.
Every day.
Yeah.
Like Saturday and Sundays too.
No. Tried not to work on Sundays.
Right.
One of the rituals my daughter and I had was we would get out early because she was an early riser, and let her mother sleep in, and we'd ride jobs. But we didn't work on Sundays unless the weather forced us to.
But it was a good way for you to find a balance to, like, spend time with her, but you were also, like, making sure.
Yeah, I don't know if you call that balance, but
it was something.
It was just what I felt like it took.
Yeah.
At the time. So, yeah.
And so with that, so we talked about from 97 to like 2005. At that point, you get the visa workers. And then what starts to change as far as, obvious question is, how did you communicate with them? Did you find guys to be translators? And what did that look like at first? When they first started coming and y'all were just trying to train them and get them on board to have the same vision of excellence as well.
Right. So I probably worked in the field with them for the first year they were in, and tried to teach them everything I knew about how to execute the work, workflow, path of motion on a property, what comes first and then what goes next, so that when the first guy's done, the last guy's done. Everybody finishes on time at the same time. Spent that year teaching him that. And, a couple of things happened. The foremen, the leaders kind of identified themselves, and I got to watch that happen, so I knew. And
because they would kind of naturally just start telling the other guys, or maybe it was the guy that everybody asked questions to.
Yeah,
I kind of see that sometimes too.
And maybe a little quicker to catch on.
Yeah,
right. And so there's a strong sense of family and that culture, and so I think that contributed. And there's a patriarch, right, in those families. It wound up, we started with 8 guys, and there were 3 families. Right. So
amongst those 8.
Yeah, the 8, there was a brother, there was a cousin.
Right.
And so those 3 guys, we kind of grew the business for the next 15 years, just as hiring
their
the
cousins,
family
their
members.
uncles, their nephews.
Yeah. And they were responsible for bringing them in. And if they didn't work out, they were responsible for letting them go. We kind of let them manage That was very important to them and their culture to manage who came in and who didn't. Right. So we just absolutely leaned into that. But yeah, they gave me the opportunity, after that year of working with them in the field, I actually didn't have to do that anymore.
And what revenue number were you at still working in the field?
Well, it was around the time that we got the H2B guys in. So, yeah, maybe 2006.
Around there.
Yeah.
So you said probably around maybe 3-5 million.
Yeah.
Something.
I would say so. It was a long time ago.
Yeah. So then flash forward, so that's all working out, and you're probably maybe at that point is what you said, you started solving people problems and not landscape problems anymore.
That's right.
And then you realize that it's not just about being really good at landscaping. We've got to be good with people and setting expectations. And so kind of talk about that a little bit and what struggles you experienced and how you kind of overcame that.
Yeah, just I began a journey of trying to understand what it took to put together an organization, rather than just to have a couple of trucks with lawnmowers in the back. And there's quite a lot out there to be said about putting together an organization, and a healthy one. So Vistage was part of that journey. Like I say, I read a lot of books, hired a lot of consultants.
Yeah.
In the end, I use the analogy of there's an old Indian parable about some blind guys trying to figure out what an elephant is for the first time, touching, whatever part of the elephant is right in front of them.
Right.
That's what I felt like
every time
these consultants, got me, was, they all had their perspective on what it was going to take to create a successful organization. And it happened to just be kind of what they were peddling, as far as what their consulting.
Right. Almost
business.
Like their doctrine of kind of thing.
Right.
Right.
Interesting. And that kind of got me into this, I call it the one piece at a time way to build or create an organization, where you're focusing on one thing or another. Maybe, create your core values and your mission statement, and you do that, and then you go focus. Now I got to go build an org chart, and so you piece and you part it together. Johnny Cash even has a song about building a car one piece at a time, and it I don't think it's works. At the same time, you got a business to run, so figuring out how all those pieces and parts interact with one another is a little bit of a trick. Right. And so nobody ever came and told me that, there's actually an operating system that you need to implement to manage all the human energy in your organization, get everybody going in the same direction. But that was the one thing that I wish we could have done better. I never quite was satisfied with where we got to, as far as
everybody
building,
being on the same
having
page.
a healthy organization. Yeah, I think sometimes we were succeeding in spite of ourselves.
Do you think the laborers, they all kind of were on the same page?
Oh, absolutely.
They knew what was they pushed each other, and kind of their culture bled into the culture of the company, and that worked. But what you're talking about specifically is maybe the account managers, the leadership, and
a lot of just a lot of politics and look, I take full responsibility.
For sure.
I maybe had a lot to learn about what it meant to be a leader, and to create the kind of organization I wanted. I was trying to figure it out. You know,
one piece at a time.
We did some things right. Yeah. Other things we didn't. We could have done a better job.
Yeah. So at the peak, so what was it, like 2016 or 17? Whenever you exited the company and sold.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, we
about how many people did
around
you have at that?
10 million. We had it would range anywhere from 85 to 95,
including
employees.
Office staff.
Yeah, everybody.
Leadership.
Yeah, and then in that 2016, I was frustrated at not being able to get where I wanted to be with respect to the organization. And then in 2016, I call it my 3D summer. I got out of a bad relationship, got divorced. My brother died that summer, and it was the flood of 2016. Our entire operation went underwater.
Oh, man.
Every mower, every truck.
Destroyed.
Well, it went underwater.
Yeah.
And
but that third D, what's the third D then?
Well, divorce, death, and disaster.
Disaster.
Yeah. And at that point, there was a company knocking. They had been, I guess they considered themselves competition. We never really paid them much mind. But they figured out they couldn't beat us. So they wanted to buy us, and they made me an offer, as they say, that I couldn't refuse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so at that point, so you sell the business, then didn't you say you stayed on with them for like a year or so? Huh?
Well, I wasn't originally supposed to go with the business. I wasn't part of the deal. They were just going to pay me out, and I was going to ride off into the sunset. And for about 6 months, that's what I did. I met my current wife in the meantime. I say met. She was actually the sister to my late brother's wife. So I had known her for a long time.
Oh, wow.
But anyway, we kind of found one another all over again. And so we were enjoying ourselves and traveled some. But when I got home, it kind of hit me. I didn't have anything going on.
All this time, all of a sudden.
Yeah. And we weren't traveling. So there was, it was just waking up at home.
Just kind of bored.
Yeah. And in the meantime, they were struggling with the acquisition. So I offered to step in and help any way that I could. And so that happened, maybe a year or so. For a year, I stepped back in, and they just kind of sandwiched the two organizations together in one building in Baton Rouge. And so the culture of that was terrible. And so I helped to, sort that out. And then it was just time for me to go.
And so backing up again to, was that ever the goal? Did you think I want to grow this business as big as I can and then I sell it? Or what, during the moments of just grinding and like pushing for excellence, being the best, what was the goal? Or was it always just, I just want to be the best, and then that's what ended up happening?
Yeah. I think just, dominating, the local markets we were in, and I didn't give a whole lot of thought to an exit strategy. I think that summer of 2016 is what kind of
pushed you to your
busted me, and so I just it was the timing of all of that.
Yeah, and so with that too, so then you come back, you kind of rode off into the sunset, met a wonderful lady, and then from there, or re-met, kind of did some almost consulting work for them in a way.
Kind of.
Right? Yeah, so that's kind of your first step into helping an organization, but not really being a part of the organization at that point. And so then what happened? So then What is Toby Massengale doing today then? So let's get to that point.
Well, so the Vistage chair, fellow by the name of Malcolm Brignac, as a group, as a Vistage group, we all became really close. And after I left Vistage, because I'd sold the business, they decided to disband and not do Vistage anymore, if that makes sense. But because we had all gotten super close, they continued to meet once a month, and so Malcolm and I were at lunch, and I was just, I guess maybe missing that companionship, and so I got back, started going to lunch with them. Wasn't Vistage anymore, so I could do that, and Malcolm had since become what's known as an EOS implementer. I was curious. I'd read Traction back when I was, still running the business and in my search. EOS is the Entrepreneurial Operating System, is what EOS stands for. And there's a book that was written out there called Traction, right, that talks about it. And I have to say, I was in that one piece at a time mentality when I read the book, and I just kind of missed what Gino Wickman was talking really about. It's an operating system. And so in talking with Malcolm was like, look, I don't know whether I'm working or playing. This thing is just awesome. I got customers that love me. I'm watching them transform their business. And I was maybe a little suspicious of that. I was like, yeah, sure, Malcolm.
Yeah.
But so I start going back to the lunches that, all my Vistage buddies, hanging out with them again. And one by one, they had implemented EOS in their businesses. And we, like I say, had all been in Vistage, and we're all striving and struggling to build a better business. Vistage kind of throws a lot at you, kind of in that one piece at a time fashion.
Because every week there's a new presenter.
It's monthly, but yeah.
Or every month. Yeah.
Right. And new consultant saying, this is what you need to do. And so, I would say that, the best thing about Vistage is we all had a shoulder to cry on, one another's.
Yeah.
I learned a lot, but it didn't really translate into helping me with my business the way I wanted it to. So fast forward, I'm attending this monthly lunch meeting. All these guys that I knew, we were all in the same boat with our businesses, started implementing EOS through Malcolm, and it transformed their organization. It was the golden chalice, if you will, of the holy grail of solutions, right, for whipping an organization into shape, getting all the arrows pointing in the same direction. That was very compelling. I wished back when I had my business, someone had come along and shared that insight, that wisdom with me. Hopefully I would have listened.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
But I found myself with, not a whole lot going on. I had sort of recovered from the frustrations I had experienced when I had my business there towards the end, and so I decided to become an EOS implementer. And that's what I'm doing now. It's amazing work.
Yeah, and so far you've been doing that about a year or 2 years now?
Yeah, about a year.
Okay. And then you do, and we've talked about this, but you do have a few clients, and you're building that up more.
Yeah, it's a process, right? And the average EOS target market client has somewhere between 10 and 250 employees. They're growing their business, they're open-minded, but they're also a little frustrated with whatever they're doing that's not working, right? Looking for answers, and that's where I can come in and give them what they're looking for.
Yeah. And so what kind of advice, other than just implement EOS, like to the guy that's still just in a truck with a few guys, do you think what kind of advice would you give him if he really wanted to grow his business? Like what's like the most, like if you just had one sentence to say, and maybe there's not one thing, but what could you say to the guy that's just kind of starting out?
So you exist at the pleasure of your customers. Your work is your billboard. It's your advertisement, first and foremost. Be consistent with that. Understand who your customer is, what they want, and try to anticipate their needs so they don't have to ask. Deliver an excellent product and build your reputation first and foremost.
Right.
And then when you reach a point, and you'll know it, you'll hit a ceiling, right? As we talk about in EOS, organizations grow through periods of evolution where it feels like you're flying, and revolution when it feels like you're falling, right? You kind of outgrow your capacity to manage the business, and you need to break through that ceiling. And at that point, I would start looking for an EOS implementer to help you get through it.
Yeah. And so for us, we've talked about that for us as well, but so right now we've got kind of hitting a ceiling of our own. I guess what do you see for the future of the industry first? So you were in it for a really long time. You're still passionate about plants, right? Like it's still, you can't escape it. Like it's still part of you. So what do you see? What's kind of next? Like the way that the H-2B visas changed the industry, what do you see is going to happen next?
I still, to the extent I have contacts who work for companies like Yellowstone, the hot topic there is mechanical mowers,
like electric, like
operatorless
mowers.
Software that can help you chart the most efficient path on a project. And obviously, this would be more appropriate for larger commercial.
Right.
Estimating via satellite that does all the takeoffs for you. The integration of there's still two camps, right? There's still like the human energy that it takes to have a landscape business, run a landscape business, and then there's technology, and we're still trying to figure out how those two marry in the best way to help landscapers build a better business, right? That's kind of what I hear and see most of the time when I'm at conferences and so forth, listening to folks talking. I think that that if they can figure out battery-operated stuff, it's going to take a more substantial foothold in the industry. So as batteries become more sophisticated, last longer, that's still a massive commitment right now. And I think regulatory-wise, that's going to force, push this technology into the forefront, make it more usable. So, at the end of the day, it's still a simple business, and, it's working with Mother Nature. There's some timeless pieces of that. It's still going to get hot in the summertime. You're not going to get rid of all the people. So, the work's going to be hard, right? It's still going to rain. Sun's still going to shine. So there are a lot of those aspects that aren't going to change. We're just hopefully get a little smarter about it. And I think that building a successful company, getting folks on the same page, moving in the same direction, those concepts have been around 100 years. They're going to be around 1,000 more. Right. So there's a lot that's not going to change in the industry. And there's some comfort in that, I think.
Yeah, it's always going to be about, are you doing what you say you're going to do? Like what you said, the advice you would give to someone who's new, like take care of the customer, take care of the product. Always make sure that your reputation is what you install.
Right.
And
Warren Buffett said, 20 years to build a reputation, 10 minutes to lose it.
Yeah.
Don't forget that.
Right.
Right. And I think being mindful of debt. Don't grow just on debt. You need to pace that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with that's huge, but also with just reputation now, like, and this will probably become more prevalent too, of just anyone can go online and like destroy your reputation very quickly with just like social media and Google. And I'm sure like even, I don't know when Google reviews really became so big, maybe in the 2010 era. Was that a thing back then?
No, not
really.
I
don't remember what it wasn't.
I can honestly say that I've never seen a Google review of my company.
No way. And you sold 2016, 2017.
Yeah.
And that's what's crazy is that's how. So most of our work is residential right now, and most of how people find us is they just type in on Google, like landscape company Baton Rouge.
Yeah.
And they find us because we rank on Google, and they find us because of our reviews.
Right.
Because we have like.
I get that.
Yeah. Right.
I use that some today
when you're doing things too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now everybody does like in. And then, like, I think one thing that's going to continue to be big, in at least in residential and probably commercial too, is just like the speed at which you can deliver of like whether it's just an estimate or like, especially with like kind of the whole Amazon, let's call it Amazon principle of like everybody wants things yesterday. And so being able to give estimates and quotes like quickly, like you were talking about the technology of like being able to, and I see that a lot of companies are starting to use that too, of like there's several different softwares out there where the client can go in on your website, especially for lawn care or lawn maintenance, and just put in their address, and then they instantly can get a quote based on metrics.
So it's not the big that eat the small, it's the fast that eat the slow. Is that?
Yeah, I think that's what I, for sure. And especially in the residential world, a lot of times people,
I can see that.
People will call us and they're like, you're the first one to answer, you're the first one to show up. And like that's really like how we've grown our company, just reputation.
Yeah, and maybe over time, kind of what my mindset was applied to that is be good enough for them to wait too.
Yeah, true.
To the extent that
that's worth it.
Rushing, it doesn't allow you to be your best. But I think that to the extent you can be efficient in turning an estimate around, through the help of technology,
right.
As long as it's accurate, as long as it, speaks the truth, if you will,
right.
Then great.
And it's like what you said earlier too, like setting the expectation.
Yeah.
So whatever expectation you set when they first have contact with you is going to be everything.
Absolutely.
So last thing I kind of want to talk about, if you were to start a landscape business again today, what would be like the first 10 steps you'd say you do to just start over?
Well,
you don't even have to give a number amount, but yeah, go ahead.
I think a reliable, solid labor stream. That's one of the number one make or break things you got to do. And I know it's tricky out there today. Minimize your debt to the extent you can and deliver an excellent product.
Yeah. Boom.
Yeah.
Easy.
Not a whole lot different than what it
was right
20 years ago.
But probably everything in business is simple. It's just application and being consistent.
Yeah.
But it's not difficult concepts. And
yeah, and the things that that are out there to do, that like creating a presence on social media. I always hired those things out. It wasn't my area of expertise. So we focused on our product.
Yeah.
And all the ancillary things that need to happen to build a successful business. We let folks who were in that industry help us with that.
Right. But that focus on the product is what, because even when I've talked to people or heard things just in being in the industry, like y'all's reputation was always great. And like people would always complain about the next person they got or what other company, but like y'all did a really good job of having that awesome reputation. And so you let the product speak for itself.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, you got to do what nobody else is going to do in your business, and that's delivering the product.
Appreciate you being on, man.
Yeah, Joseph, nice chatting.
More to come, and
thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So check us next time. We're going to do more stuff like this, too. We'll continue to talk more about landscaping as well, but let's plant some plants.